There we go.
You believe in freedom cannot rest.
Great. Love that music.
You believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Hear me talking to you. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of black men, black mother sons is as important as the killing of white men, white mother sons. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Sing it with me if you like it. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. The older I get, the better I know that the secret of my going on is when the reins are in the hands of the young who dare to run against the storm. 'Cause to me, young people come first. They have the courage where we fail. And if I can but shed some light, I say, carry us through the gales. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Hear me talking to ya. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Then struggling myself don't need a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way my struggle survives. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. At times I can be quite difficult. How about no man's word? We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Hear me talking to you. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Not needing to clutch for power, not needing the light just to shine on me. I need to be one in the number as we stand against tyranny. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it
Thank you. That was done in honor of Black History Month. Thank you. While we came in. So we're going to call the meeting to order of the National Federation of Democratic Women Western States is now called to order. And I want to welcome you all to our regional meeting. And we were discussing earlier, so across the Western states, we are experiencing gorgeous, beautiful, awesome weather. And we know everybody would rather be outside enjoying this weather. So if any of your members ditched us because they wanted to get some gardening done or something like that, we will be putting our recording and sharing it with every state, and they can put it on their Facebook page, okay? So ladies, this is our opportunity to network with Democratic women in the Western states, and of course, some very fine Democratic women from the central and eastern regions of our country. We all volunteer to help get Democrats elected to office. So here is our chance to find out new information from other states that we may be able to apply in our own home state. So without further ado, we are going to start our meeting with a land acknowledgement. We adopted the National Federation of Democratic Women acknowledged the land acknowledgement in honor of the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples. So without ado, we're going to do that. The NFDW, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. So I am proud to introduce Rebecca Tutchin. She is the Vice President of the Laguna Pueblo Federation of Democratic Women in Cibola County, New Mexico. The Laguna Pueblo Federation of Democratic Women is our very first Native federation in the country. And we are honored to have Rebecca with us. Rebecca?
Guati se hopa et eat my jami hano kaweka hano. Gatana gupishtaya. Naya nashtia. Hawaii ma gupishtaya. Naya nashtia. Hawaii ma sokini. Naya nashtia. I acknowledge that we gather here today on the lands of the original inhabitants of this land, now known as Arizona, California, Nevada, New Mexico, and Washington. Excuse me, I get very emotional acknowledging our inhabitants, the first Americans of this land. You are on stolen land. We respect their sovereignty and their rights to self-determination, and we honor their sacred women and spiritual relationship with the land and the water. As the original inhabitants of this land, the indigenous people continue to be stewards of the land and waterways, where a way of life has been sustained with gathering, hunting, and fishing in their usual and customary areas since time immemorial. Water is life, and we are water. There are 574 recognized federally tribes in the United States. We are all indigenous to this land, and we are all stewards of this land. The Laguna Pueblo Federation of Democratic Women come from a matriarchal society, and we are stewards of our Mother Earth. We represent 4 of the 6 villages in our Pueblo, villages of Masita, villages of Parahi, villages of Olaguna and Masita. Thank you for allowing me in this space and to do the land acknowledgement. Tawa Naya Nashtia Katsana Kupishtai. Hawaii. May our ancestors carry us, every one of us that are in this space, that do for our people, our land, our water, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, very much. That was beautiful. It was really beautiful to hear your native tongue. Okay, so I have just a couple of introductions that we have some VIPs with us. We have Senator Marilyn Chase. She's a former state senator of Washington State. We have with us Dorothy Adams, also known as Dot Adams. She is the corresponding secretary for the National Federation. We are honored to have our president of the National Federation with us here this evening, Gail Buckner, welcome. We are going to have Virgie Rollins with us. Virgie is our DNC representative. Oh,
I'm here.
Hey, Virgie. Hey, Virgie is here and she is our DNC representative, as well as the chairwoman of the Black Caucus for the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. And we also have with us President Cindy Jenks. She is our immediate past president. Welcome, ladies. We are honored to have you with us here in Western States. Welcome. And without ado, I am going to turn this over to Carolyn. She is the president in California, and she will be introducing our very special guest speaker. Carolyn?
Greetings. Thank you, Pam. I think we do have a little slight schedule change. So what we're going to do in honor of Virgie Rollins' birthday today, we're going to let her give us the DNC update as she so requested. So Virgie, take it away.
Well, hello, Western Region, and Pam and Carolyn, to all the state presidents. I'm in the middle of dinner, and I just thought I just couldn't miss it, because the Western Region have always invited me. And so just to give you an update on the DNC, well, we had our first meeting for the year since convention was in October. And it was a virtual meeting because it's still, the pandemic is still going strong in many states, but we can see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel now. And we had at that meeting, the DNC met, and we got all our new members that was elected for the at-large and our standing committee since our new chair. So it's a new DNC, and we met in December. The executive committee met in December, which that meeting was a hybrid meeting, and it probably should have been virtual because it was held in South Carolina, and it was kind of a spreader, but everybody seemed to recover very well. And at that meeting, they had a lot of the staff gave presentations on the tech and data update and civic engagement and voter protection, and also updated on, of course, we've been talking about the president's Build Back Better. We've been spreading the message on the rescue plan and the infrastructure plan. We've been getting and I know I've been doing a lot of meetings for that. So they gave an overview on the group coalitions and community engagement, and the emphasized the green fly. And I know the NFDW done had a workshop on the green fly, which is a new tool that makes it easy to share on social media platforms. So I'm hoping that you all picked up on it. And it was, of course, there was resolutions and resolutions presented from the Rules Committee. And so our next meeting is up and coming, which is our winter meeting. It's up and coming, and that's in-person meeting, and I think everybody's getting excited about it. It's going to be in DC at the Washington Hilton. So I think we all are looking forward to getting out the house. And when I heard Pam say that you guys got good weather, well, it's 19 degrees in Michigan, snow everywhere. So I kind of envy you guys, but I think you all need to come to Michigan and get some of this weather. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Virgie. Appreciate it. Well, enjoy the rest of your birthday. But being from Michigan, I know there's a toddy there to keep you warm.
That's right.
So happy birthday.
I hate I'm going to miss the speaker, but I know it's going to be a great meeting. Thank you, guys.
We're recording it, so you'll get it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So up next is
thank you.
our president, Gail Buckner, and the National Federation of Democratic Women have been working hard and diligently on the ERA. So our president is here to give us an update. Madam President.
Thank you, Pam. I am delighted to be with you this evening. I was very moved by your music introduction and also by your inspirational words about Native Americans. What a touching presentation. Yes, the Equal Rights Amendment is a priority for NFDW. We've worked alongside the National ERA coalitions for several years, and in our last board meeting, we decided to make it official. We have now become an official partner with the ERA coalition. That'll help us stay updated on everything that is happening. And we have ERA leaders in our organization all around the country. You know, January the 27th was the 2-year anniversary of Virginia ratifying as the 38th state. And of course, there's been a battle going on there to get the National Archivist to publish the 28th Amendment as part of the Constitution. We even saw the former Attorney General, Bill Barr, issue a statement trying to tell everybody that the ERA is dead. Well, he's mistaken. The ERA is not dead. The 27th Amendment was added to the Constitution 100 years after James Madison first put out his list of 12 items to add to the Constitution. The first 10 became the Bill of Rights. Then one of his other 2 amendments came in the form of the 27th Amendment. Like I said, 100 years later. So there's no time limit on equality. It's time for the National Archivist to step up and do his job. On the 27th, I was so proud of President Biden when he issued his strong statement in support of the Equal Rights Amendment. And our Democrats in the U.S. House passed a resolution stating that the ERA has been passed. The 38th state has ratified. So we're going to stick with it, and looking forward to the day when we can carry a copy of our printed Constitution in our purses and hand it out and say, here, read the 28th Amendment. So thank you, Pam, for having me. Be glad to answer any questions, maybe if anyone has any questions.
Are there any questions?
By the way, today we put out our 2022 position papers that we provide for our states to use in their advocacy work. And there is a wonderful resolution, position paper on the Equal Rights Amendment. So if you haven't seen those position papers, just shoot me an email and I'll be glad to get them out to you.
I think Susan has a question, Madam President.
Okay,
Yes, I just wondered, I haven't had a chance to look at the position paper, unfortunately, and I will do that. But in the meantime, what specific actions are we going to be able to take? Is there anything like letter writing or speaking to legislators or anything of that kind that we can do in order to get them?
absolutely. We have folks who are now urging us to call our legislators every day until the legislation is totally ratified and published in the Constitution. And by the way, I intended to mention two of our great leaders with the Equal Rights Amendment. Audrey Dempsey was front and center on a rally, ERA rally on the 27th, our president in Nevada, and Jerry Burton was right there with her. So we have a very good ERA coalition subcommittee as part of our legislative committee. And call those legislators. Calls, I think, probably work just as good as writing letters. They're instant and it saves you a stamp. And we have been told by folks who have worked on the Hill that these offices keep a tally of how many calls they get during the week and what the subjects are. And at the end of the week, they give the elected official a list of how many calls that week and how many subject matters were addressed. So yes, make those calls.
Thank you.
Pam, I see a couple more hands, but in respect to our speaker, can we hold those until after?
Yes, I think that would be a good idea. And Carolyn, I'm turning the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. I am happy to chair with Washington State Chair Corinne Chase. She is multitasking as we speak. She's got 300 students on the ski slope, but they still have good weather. I'm reminded by our speaker that we met at UCLA. So we're coming full circle here. And we're with our third vice president, who happens to be on, Christine Pelosi. So this is really a treat. I think you will find it delightful. When I first read her whole bio, I thought, God, I'm not worthy. But you'll hear from her shortly. Michele Bratcher Goodwin is a Chancellor Professor at UC Irvine in Irvine, California, and she's the founding director for the Center for Biotechnology and Global Health Policy. She's also a recipient of the 2021 Distinguished Senior Faculty Award for Research. Really a high honor, and she's also an elected member of the American Law Institute, as well as an elected fellow of the American Bar Foundation and the Hastings Center. One of the things that I was pleased to find out about, and it's just fascinating. She did a dossier and it addresses legal questions related to freedom of speech, religious exercise, equal protection, due process, race and sex discrimination, reproductive rights, which is important to us, slavery, and LGBTQ equality. This is in, I wanted to say probably every law review you can think of, but I saw she was definitely in Harvard, California, Washington, Michigan law, where I'm from. So trained in sociology and anthropology, Professor Goodwin has conducted field research also in Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, focusing on human trafficking, marriage, sex, organs, and other biologics. She's written several books, but two that struck me were Policing the Womb and Invisible Women and the Criminalization of Motherhood. So I know I must at least get those two. She's also host On the Issues with Michele Goodwin. It's a podcast at Ms. Magazine. So as I said, she's written 6 books, over 100 articles, essays, but I was particularly struck by her work on transformation, education access, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. So as co-host of, as co-chair of Justice, Equity, and inclusion at the state party, that struck me as well. So please give a warm NFDW welcome to Professor Michele Goodwin. Clap.
Thank you very
Use
much
your
for that very
reaction.
warm welcome. And I thank you, Rebecca, too, for that very beautiful opening of today's program and the land acknowledgement, which is so critically important, because the truth of it is we are on stolen land. And we need to address and live with, really scrutinize what that means, and try to reconcile what that means in our lives, rather than shove it under the table, under the carpet. And I think it resonates so much given the kind of censorship that's taking place across the country right now, with the attacks that have been framed as attacks on critical race theory, which is so interesting considering that it's a very narrow area of legal study that very few people, relatively speaking, in law have some specialty in. Not every law school faculty even has someone who teaches critical race theory, and it's really no different than other theories like law and economics, feminist jurisprudence, etc. But the fact that it's been used as a means of doing something broader. It's been used as a proxy for doing something much broader in our schools, and that is denying young people the opportunity to learn about Indigenous history, to learn about suffrage, to learn about American slavery and Jim Crow. And we haven't even gotten on the table understanding Asian exclusion in this country and the alienation of Asian people who were not able to naturalize in the United States until the mid part of the 20th century, even though there were communities that built our railroads, created our farms in the state of California, and so much more. So I start there, even though that's not a part of what brings me to you today, but that land acknowledgement really does resonate. And so I wanted to pay acknowledgement to it because it does matter. And the tears that you shed are those that touch closely to my heart, because there are so many ways in which we neglect understanding what has been bled into the soil in these United States. And so let me start with saying that in the kind of bridge between what Rebecca offered and the talk that I want to share with you today briefly, and then take Q&A about reproductive health, rights, and justice and what this means in these times, something that resonates with me that we don't often talk about, but is a bridge from Rebecca's remarks. We don't have acknowledgement or thought about what is it that a mother must tell her child the night before the slave auction? The night before she knows that her child will be sold off and she'll never see that child again. The stories that mothers had to tell in 1619, 1629, 1639, 49, 59, 69, 79, and all the years in between. What story must she tell her child in a country whose constitution denies her child personhood, whose state constitutions deny that child personhood, in a country that has enacted fugitive slave laws, which would allow, even if she could escape to a free place eventually in Massachusetts or in Philadelphia or in Cincinnati, Ohio, but the fugitive slave laws that would drag her and that child back to the bowels of slavery. The fugitive slave laws that call her and her children property, and the laws that do so. So what does she tell that child to remind that child to stay whole, to keep his or her chin up in a society that says she's a piglet? She's no different than a cat or a cow or anything in the field because they're just chattel, denied human status. What does that mother say to that child in an institution that both publicly and privately says that she lacks no value and worth, and that mother who will never see that child again? Now, I know we have busy days and much to think about, But I hope we sit with that, because these are matters that we don't sit with. And we've never framed a space of empathy around these kinds of questions at all. We've never done the work of actually asking such a question. We've never done the work of asking how in a society could people for a day, a week or more just bid on people and to continue to raise the billet. If we were in a movie theater and had to spend 15 minutes watching an auction take place of a child, of a girl child, some people might say that's so repugnant, it's so egregious, the filmmaker has gone too far by making us sit through 15 minutes of something that uncomfortable. And then we don't think about the centuries that people endured with that discomfort of being on the auction block. It was Sojourner Truth in a talk that was known as Ain't I a Woman, who really framed questions for us back in the 1800s. And many people recall that talk as being about chivalry, because she does say no one opens up a carriage door for Black women, and that is true. But she actually began her talk in a way that was entirely reminiscent of the years that our country endured under the Trump administration, because she said, and I bore 13 children and saw nearly each one snatched from my arms, and nobody heard my cry but God. Ain't I a woman? This kind of illustrative power of her speech reminded me of children arriving at our borders and being snatched away from their parents, from their mothers, not even allowed to hug their siblings, given frozen burritos, sleeping under aluminum blankets, being denied toothpaste and soap, and a government that would argue for its position before federal courts and say we don't have to provide soap and toothpaste to these children. What kind of country is that? What kind of government is that? And I can't help but think that if we care about abortion, we should care about that too. If we care about abortion, we should care about the history too. And what does that history look like in our country? Well, part of it, Rebecca started us off with. But then another part of it is what Sojourner Truth spoke to. But then there's another rail of it too, that as we think about white supremacy and racism in our country and its spectrum in our nation's narrative, we can't avoid looking straight in the face of white supremacy against white people. Eugenics in the United States, the early part of the American 20th century, where the United States ranked whiteness, over 30 categories of whiteness. And the kind of policing that took place, which we have reframed, that took place at the Statue of Liberty, which was really a quarantine station, one that targeted people for the most heinous treatment who came from countries that were not welcomed into the United States, helping to merge in an era of eugenics in our country, where we saw tens of thousands of people, starting off with poor white people, poor white women being coercively and forcefully sterilized against their will, leading to a 1927 Supreme Court case, Buck v. Bell, a case where Chief Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough, better than to let them starve for their imbecility. Society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind, concluding the case with the laws that are broad enough for vaccination are broad enough to include cutting the fallopian tubes. And with that, little white girls who came from damaged, troubled homes, whose parents may have been alcoholic or homeless, coercively sterilized at 10, 11, 12 years old in the state of Virginia. And then the Nazis coming to the United States and taking that law that the United States Supreme Court upheld from Virginia and taking it verbatim and moving it over to Germany, where it became the foundation for the Third Reich and their eugenics program. These are the parts of our history that are worth us noting, because in many ways, it's right in our face right now what's happened in terms of abortion rights. It's on people's minds. People are outraged about it, but we should be equally outraged about this history from which we come. And I haven't even shared all of the history, and I'm mindful of the time that we have today. So let me talk about where we are today, and I'll open it up for Q&A. And let me say this, I thought it was really important. I'm in Los Angeles right now. I'm not at home. I'm here with my husband. But I thought it important enough when Christine reached out to me about being with you to take the time to be with you and to carve out this moment. And I realized that we're recording today, and I would just say, I didn't know that we were, but I would just say sharing directly with your membership rather than putting on Facebook. But let me say this, the time that we are in now are dangerous times. These are times that, as Carolyn talked about, I write in my book, Policing the Womb, Invisible Women and the Criminalization of Motherhood, a space that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I can tell you about talks that I gave where people looked at me and were like, how could you be saying that this is what's coming next? And I wrote about, over the years, Black women being the canaries in the coal mine, Black and brown women, because of what was happening to them on the state level, where states were already creating precedents for the oppressive treatment of Black women, where Black women in South Carolina were being dragged out of hospitals, literally, in bloodied gowns, shackled and chained, shackled while giving birth, and then carted out, like scenes from slavery taking place in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And I was saying, if it can happen to Black women, eventually it's going to catch up. If prosecutors can say, we have created in our own minds personhood in your fetus, constitutional rights in your fetus, even though it's not drafted into law, horrible kinds of cases where Black women were coerced into taking plea deals of 10 and 20 years, locked away because they had a miscarriage or a stillbirth. And I said, if it can happen to them, eventually we will see the outgrowth of this in other kinds of spaces. Of course, it will spread to abortion. And of course, it will spread to other areas of criminalization. It won't be long before everybody is affected by the hailstorm that's coming. And this is what we see. So we see in Texas, the Texas law SB 8, a law that bans abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, that makes no exception for cases of rape and incest. A law that explicitly pulls a page almost out of slavery with allowing for the bounty hunting of people who aid and abet people who would seek to terminate a pregnancy. We see this in the Dobbs case that the Supreme Court has just taken up, the Mississippi 15-week abortion ban that provides no exceptions for rape or incest, which strikes right at the heart of Planned Parenthood v. Casey and also Roe v. Wade, and a Supreme Court that now may be poised to completely gut Roe, and Roe has already been gutted now in Texas. For many practical purposes, it no longer exists. And when in a time where, depending upon the Supreme Court's decision that's going to come out sometime late this spring, maybe in June, that there are other over 20 states, possibly 26, that will have ready what are called trigger laws that will go into effect that essentially gut Roe possibly altogether, or certainly significantly diminish an individual's ability to be able to terminate a pregnancy. There's so much more that I could say about this, and my book, Policing the Womb, says a lot within this space. But I'm glad that you are organized, and I'm glad for what you are doing, because as I've been telling people, if you care about abortion rights, you should care about voting rights, should care about people getting out to the polls, should care about voter suppression, because these things go hand in hand. And so I'm going to end here and then take some questions. But let me just say this. between 2010 and 2013, there were more anti-abortion, anti-contraception laws that were proposed and enacted at the state level than in the 30 years prior combined. This was a time marked by the Tea Party, the rise of the Tea Party, but it wasn't just that that was happening. In the same breath, what was happening were voter suppression laws, the gerrymandering within states, laws that would push back against immigration, laws that were chilling to conversations that were being taken about climate change and about global warming. All of these things, all of these matters align. And so I'm so happy that these are matters that concern you and the work that you all are doing because it's urgent. It's critically important. And the final thing that I will say is that the pipelines that we build are important. And that is to say, getting young people engaged in these spaces. And I'm not just talking about the young people who are in college. I'm also talking about those who are in high school and those who are in elementary school, understanding in the proper ways just what's at stake right now in terms of our democracy and also the issues that you all are concerned about. So it's my pleasure to be with you, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Carolyn, can you do this?
Yes, Carolyn can. Oh my
right.
gosh, where do we start? I'm going to start with Christine Pelosi. She had her hand up first.
Christine, so great to be with you. So great to see you.
Oh, Professor, thank you so much. That was incredible. As always, it's going to take me days to just digest what you said in 20 minutes. But I would like to ask a question of you as an advocate and a teacher. As we know, very shortly, President Biden is going to nominate the first Black woman Supreme Court justice. And it is going to be a case of joy and celebration for us, but also extreme gaslighting and defensiveness. So I'm just wondering your perspective on that, and what are the best ways that as women advocates and as an organization, do you think that we can help back her up and help her get through this nomination process and get confirmed?
Speaking to the #1 superstar herself, Christine Pelosi, I'm glad you asked that question, because the questions that you asked baked in are the right questions to be asking. And I think that one of the things that we need to do is to remind people with regard to the court, because there's going to be so many questions about merit. And of course, those are meant to gaslight. And Stephen Vladeck, who's been writing in this space a lot about the shadow
Excuse me a
docket.
second, Professor. Susan, can you mute whoever that is, please? Thank you. Go ahead, Professor. Thank you.
Yeah, so I see a couple of things. That one, it's important to remind people about, as much as we possibly can, who's on the court now, what do qualifications mean, right? A quarter of the people who have been on the court in just the last 50 years had no prior judicial experience whatsoever. Half of the people who are on the court now had less than 5, who've been on the court in the last 50 years or so, had less than 5 years of experience, judicial experience beforehand, right? This is not to slam anybody else, but it is to set the stage for what has been part of this conversation about merit. There's going to be this lesser or less qualified. The people who've been lifted up, for the most part, with the exception of a couple people who aren't coming from the bench, and it's fine for people who haven't come from the bench. Amy Coney Barrett was a judge for less than a year before being nominated and put on the court. We have Elena Kagan, who had 0 judicial experience before being on the court, right? Like, this is normal. So I think setting the stage and reminding people about what that stage is really, really important. But the other thing that I think is important is that we not get distracted by what the nonsense is, because it is meant to be distracting, this sort of claim of a conflating, like, will a Black woman know the difference between, a case book and a J. Crew catalog? How insulting, and, how fanning of the flames. It couldn't help me, think of, like, given that Michelle Obama had made so popular, like, J. Crew was just like some attempt to, like, kick at Michelle Obama. But the reality is that there is going to be a nominee, and that nominee will deserve to be able to have her confirmation hearing. And I think having pressure on senators to make sure across the country that this person gets her confirmation hearing and to get them to behave themselves as best as possible is going to be important. But I will say this, Christine, I don't necessarily expect that there will be some people who behave well. I think that we are in a time where it's going to be a matter of count the votes and get through. Show the love in social media and other ways. People have already shown themselves to behave in ways that are really degrading to them. And the final thing that I'll say, which is I think something about our democracy, is that it's unfortunate that we are in a time where we can look at the difference between Sandra Day O'Connor, who got a 99-0 vote in her confirmation, and where we are today, which perhaps at best may mean 53 votes if we're looking at Ketanji Brown and what she was able to get, during her most recent confirmation hearing. And that's unfortunate, right? That there is this kind of partisan voting when there really shouldn't be, about these amazing candidates who are on Biden's list. So thank you so much for the question. It's a great question.
I'm going to, I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to tag on to that because this is a follow-up. I wanted to get your opinion about expanding the Supreme Court, since we're talking about that.
Well, let me just say, and I'm going to put in the chat too, maybe I'll do it when I finish, the recent podcast that we've done on Ms. Magazine. We are doing a series called The Road to Confirmation. And we just had our first one launch, and it's just great. Steve Vladeck is on it. Danielle Holly Walker, who's the Dean of Howard Law School, whose name has also been floated for the Supreme Court. She was a Fifth Circuit Court. She's now the Dean of Howard Law School, had been a professor at the University of South Carolina Law School. Franita Tolson, who's testified before Congress, was also on that podcast episode, and Zanelle October, who's the Executive Vice President of the American Constitution Society. It is an absolutely fabulous podcast episode. So I'll put that in the chat, and I think that there's a lot of not only good information that comes from that, but also talking points that come to that. I don't think that that's on the table, Carolyn, with the Biden administration expanding the courts. And here's, I think, important to take a moment to think about Jimmy Carter. When we think about Justice Breyer, who is stepping down from the court, and we think about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there's actually a lot that they have in common that's beyond the fact that they were both liberals on the court and Breyer still on the court. A lot of people may not realize is that they got their start on the federal bench because of Jimmy Carter. In 1980, he nominated both of them to federal circuit courts. And it was Bill Clinton who then, a year apart, nominated both for the United States Supreme Court. They followed similar trajectories in that way. But the reason why I mentioned Jimmy Carter is because President Carter was able to oversee an expansion of the courts. And the expansion of the courts that he saw was not in the US Supreme Court, though there are no rules about the United States Supreme Court being a particular size in our United States Constitution. But we have seen, and and it hasn't necessarily been controversial in the past, although in this climate certainly could be, but the expansion of federal seats. So I'm talking about federal district court seats, federal courts of appeal seats. And this is critically important because the first step in litigation, when we want to stamp out laws that are unjust, laws that infringe upon people's civil liberties and civil rights, usually, if it's affecting people mass scale, the thing to do is to try to get an injunction against that law going into effect. Who hears those cases? It's the district court judges. So as important as the Supreme Court is, and it is important, the reality is the first block, which often can stand as the permanent block, is the district court. And I'll give you an example. In the Dobbs case, the Mississippi abortion law didn't just get enacted. That was a law that had been enacted, had been signed into law by the governor, but it had been enjoined. There was a judge that said, no way, no how. This is unconstitutional. It messes with Roe. That was a district court judge. It was Judge Carlton Reeves. And I will tell you that opinion that Judge Reeves wrote will make you say, let's make sure that there are a bunch of district court judges that Biden puts on the court, because his footnotes were dropping the microphone. He was citing in his footnotes Fannie Lou Hamer. In his footnotes, he was talking about, he uses the term gaslight, that Mississippi is trying to gaslight in this domain because Mississippi has never cared about the health and safety of Black women or women, poor women in that state. So I would say that, you know, if one is really pushing in this domain, the area to push is the expansion of district and federal courts of appeals.
Wow. Well, it's Michele. Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I know there's no gentlemen, I'm used to saying that, but there should be some. We'll have to work on that.
Invisible ones.
To hear some of these messages. But I have to tell you, this has been just dynamic. It's a short time. I'm with Christine. I've got to I just saw a play last night called Celebrity. I'm already trying to digest the shock of all of that. And now you on top of it. I'll be thinking all weekend, the rest of the weekend, about how do I deal with that information? What do I do about all that information? How do we share this information that we heard today? So please, on behalf of National Federation. Oh, is there a question?
Can I say this? It's not a question, but just as you wrap up, here's something that I want to do. I want to thank each and every one of you. I want to thank each and every one of you for staying the course. In a time in which it's been really, really hard. What we saw with Hillary Clinton and the Trump election, all hard, all along the way. This is a time where we have to raise resources, where we have to make sure that people get the information that they need. It's not easy, the work that you all do, and you stay the course and you stay in the fight. And you do it no matter what, no matter who's serving in the White House or not. You all are rolling up your sleeves all of the time. And I so value and I appreciate what you do. You do the unpaid labor to make our country a better place. You do this so that we can actually honor what is written in our Constitution, such that it's not just words on paper, but that it's meaningful in people's lives. And I think it's really important for me to say that. And I really, really thank you for all of it. All that you do, that which is public and visible, but also that which is behind the scenes that people never get to see.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm a behind the scenes person myself. I think we can get a lot more accomplished, cuts out a lot of the politics. So ladies, please give a warm thank you. Thank you for use your reaction, use your hand claps, do whatever. We will be in touch. I've taken your advice. Maybe we'll just share it with our members only. But best of you to you. Happy Valentine's Day. You're with your husband, so I'm sure that'll be a good treat. And thank you again so much. You're welcome to stay or go. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Really, really, truly.
Carolyn, before you go, this is Karen Chase.
Oh yeah, great.
I was able to join you and hear Professor Goodwin. I just want to, the president of the Washington State chapter, and I so appreciate you making time and space for us tonight. And I really greatly appreciate you saying that it is never too young to start. And I think that's one thing. I serve on our Edmonds School Board out here, and it is the education of children and the awakening is so vital. So I so appreciate you mentioning that and really appreciate you spending your time with us today.
Thank you. And can I take 30 seconds to just say that my daughter, who's now in the Netherlands about to finish a PhD, I remember taking her to Democratic rallies. And I remember at 2, she came up with this line, "We are Democrats, we're not Demo-rats." But it's like you take them and they figure out their own way of being empowered and in the space, and thank you, because I do think, it's what others have done, right? And we need to be doing this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor, so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We've read the uplifting words and motivating us to go into these midterm elections because they're very, very important. And we all know how hard it is to get out the vote in a midterm election. Thank you. So we're going to continue with our program here today. And I just want to give a shout out to the New Mexico Federation of Democratic Women for having 18 of you joining us here today. And I know those 18 women would appreciate me saying how much we love and adore our Deb Haaland. She started as a field organizer for Obama in 2012. She was in my county. That's how I met her. And she moved on to be our state chairwoman. She moved on to be our congresswoman. And now we are so proud to have Deb Haaland as our Secretary of Interior. So there we go. We're going to go on to our little workshop. And what we have done here is each state is going to talk a little bit about abortion rights in their state and how the state is impacted. We don't want to take more than 3 minutes. So when I call on you, try to keep that to 3 minutes. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and start for New Mexico. In New Mexico, I have a good story. In 2019, we discovered in our legislation that there was a 1969 law still on the books, alive and active, that was very, very harsh about abortion. So that law actually would prosecute doctors and women if they were caught having an abortion or giving an abortion. So of course, when Donald Trump got into office, it's very worrisome for women. And we all knew that Roe versus Wade was in trouble. So House Bill 51 in New Mexico simply got rid of that law so that it was off the books. And then once it's off the books, Roe versus Wade is the law of the land in New Mexico. It passed through the House, and then it came to the Senate, and 5 Democrats, 4 men, 1 woman voted against us and voted against women. We didn't like it. So in 2020, every single one of those incumbents was challenged by a woman, and all 5 in a primary. In the primary, 4 out of the 5 beat the incumbents. In the general, 2 out of the 4 beat the Republican. And so we are so proud last year that House Bill 51 that got that ugly law off of our books was eliminated. And now in New Mexico, Roe versus Wade is the law of the land because we are bad. All right. I am going to go. I don't think there's anyone here from Arizona tonight, but I'm going to go to Carolyn in California, and you can tell us what you guys do to fight or how you help or what it is that you do to protect our healthcare rights.
Well, I'll be brief. California, as many of you know, we've had laws on the books for the longest in protecting the rights of women for abortion. That has not changed, nor will it change. There recently was a law passed that's even being floated in the legislature right now about refuge for an understanding that we may need more facilities. There's also funding that has been in the current budget from the governor for more resources and to staff up some of the current facilities that we have throughout the state. There's still always a concern, particularly in the rural areas, just about healthcare in general. But there is supposed to be more money in the budget for that as well. The question becomes, can we really do a come one, come all? What are the ramifications of that? What is some of the security? This is some of the dialogue and discussion and concerns that's going on in our legislature right now. Even if we pass this law, there are concerns about, well, what would that budget number be? You can't just say, oh, Arizona can come, Texas can come, but nobody else can. So they're trying to get their arms wrapped around this proposal to detail how abortions would be funded for out-of-state women. And that has to be negotiated in the state legislature this year. But it could be a mixture of state and private funds. They're looking into talking about that with some of our more well-to-do, shall I say, residents of the state of California. But the plan is that we are going to try to accommodate as many people as we possibly can. Not only is it calling for an increase in services, but also there's money they're setting aside for increase on education. We don't want to neglect the fact, for example, they're adding more clinics to our high schools, trying to put more resources by the high schools for the clinics to train and teach and educate. They're also looking at providing more access to the Plan B pill, et cetera. So there are a lot of things that they're taking into consideration that can perhaps help. And maybe that same education plan they're thinking where people would not have to leave. And this gets back to education too. If you're taking the Plan B pill, then maybe you don't have to get the abortion because you're doing proactive reproductive discussions, whether that takes place at the high school level, the middle school level. How can, even on the education side, I know in our Department of Education, what's appropriate time to discuss the whole reproduction, maternity, what happens, all of that. And they feel that the earlier we start educating, the better off we'll be. So I would ask Christine if she wanted to add something to that, as she works a lot in that area with Planned Parenthood and some other agencies.
Madam President, we're way past 3 minutes.
Okay, I took too long. I apologize.
I'll just put the info in the chat. But thank you, Carolyn. You got us covered excellently.
Thank you, Christine, very much.
Could I just say one thing? It does.
Yes.
It's also part of our Black maternal health momnibus in the federal level and also at the state level that we're focusing on Black reproductive justice and maternal health as well in that context. So they do go together. Thanks.
Thank you. You know, I don't believe that Madam President Audrey Dempsey is with us today because she was getting knee replacements, and that is a priority, of course. So I believe, Ellen, would you be so kind as to let us know what's going on in your state and maybe some helpful hints?
Great. Thank you so much, Pam. And Audrey sends her regrets that she couldn't be with everyone today. So in 1990, the women of Nevada worked really diligently and got a referendum passed saying that our laws on choice could not be repealed without a direct vote of the people. So Nevada started out being way ahead of the game. But in 2019, we passed additional legislation, and I was fortunate to have been in the legislature at the time and a primary sponsor of a bill that strengthened reproductive rights and took it even farther. And I gave a copy of the link to you, Pam, in the chat that I could send directly. And if you could please share it with the group, it's a link to the bill. And if anybody wants to work on it or has any questions, please get in touch with me because I'm happy to talk about what we did in a much more extensive manner.
Are we all still there?
We are.
Okay. Ellen, are you done? I'm sorry, my computer kind of went, ooh.
Oh, yeah, I'm done. But if
Thank
you could share the link I sent you with everyone.
Yes,
That
Karen,
would
can
be
you help
great.
me with that?
Or I can
Susan?
send it to somebody else. Who should I send it to?
Karen Chase.
Okay.
Okay. She's our technology guru.
Ah, okay. Then
Yes.
great.
Okay, we have with us Madam President Jenny Ballou from the state of Idaho. Jenny, the floor is yours.
Why, thank you so much, Pam. I am Jenny Ballou. I'm from Idaho. I also serve as the National Federation third vice president. Happy to be with you all. I know some of you were on our call this morning doing the rollout of position papers. Wow, what a fabulous event. Do check that out on YouTube. You're going to learn so much. I only learned on Wednesday that I'd be given 3 minutes to talk about this issue. And so since it's not my strong suit, I'm going to give my time to Misty Della Carpini Tolman, and she is the Idaho State Director for Planned Parenthood Alliance Advocates. She's joined our call, and I would love for her to give you a much better update on what's happening in the state of Idaho. Misty, thank you so much for joining us with short notice.
Absolutely, Jeannie. Thank you so much for having me, everyone. I am coming to you from the unceded lands of the Shoshone-Bannock people, and it's a beautiful day here in Boise, Idaho, so I've got like the sun blinding me, but there's a lot happening in Idaho when it comes to reproductive rights, and unfortunately, we're on the defense of most of it. As you know, we're in an incredibly hostile state, and we have not one, but 2 trigger laws on the books. Both of them could be triggered by the 2 cases that are currently before the Supreme Court. So we have an all-out ban on the books that would go into effect should Roe v. Wade be overturned in the Dobbs v. Jackson case. And there's a plethora of outcomes that case could end up providing depending on how narrowly they rule on it. So it might be enough to trigger our all-out ban. It might just be enough to get, 15 weeks on the books or something along those lines. We also have a 6-week trigger law or a 6-week ban that's a trigger law on the books that would go into effect if any court, not just the Supreme Court, but an appellate court as well, across the country were to rule on a similarly stringent ban. So we've had our eyes peeled on that for some time. In addition, and those were passed just 2 years apart. So really it was like, finally, Idaho lawmakers were saying the quiet parts out loud, right, of what their intentions were, which is to all out ban abortion in our state entirely. Now, this year, we've had 2 anti-choice laws introduced that, when interacting together, essentially act similarly to the Texas SB 8 6-week ban. They've added a civil piece to our current 6-week trigger law, where they will keep the 6-week trigger law in place because that has the criminal piece to it, and they know that is unconstitutional. And so they're letting other courts decide that and not having it come to Idaho until another court upholds a similar law. And then they're doing this ploy by adding the civil piece that they know that the Supreme Court has greenlighted text allowed to stay in effect while they're talking about the merits of that bill. And they're going to have that go into effect 30 days after signed by the governor. So there's a lot of pieces moving in Idaho that, when you take into consideration the cases that are in front of the Supreme Court, really make it so that access to abortion and abortion rights are more dire than they've ever been in our state. We do have a small spark of light and excitement and positivity in the fact that we've been working on a bill to expand access to contraceptives for a while, and that made it out of committee this week. We think we're almost positive we have the votes to get it out of the Senate and to get it out of the House. So we're really excited that we have something hopeful happening. And at the same time, we are working extremely hard. You'll be able to find our action alerts all over the internet to be able to email the committee and flood that committee with opposition to SB 1309, which new 6-week ban, and make sure they know how deeply harmful and unpopular a ban like that is. We already know that it's going to affect Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and people of color who already have so many barriers to accessing healthcare. And we're really, really concerned about our communities here in Idaho. So we're fighting like we've never fought before to try and get these bills defeated.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very informative. And yes, we know you have a hard time in Idaho, so keep up with the good work. You got Jenny there. It should be good. Okay. Karen, are you on or are you with the kids?
Karen
So
has
for-
her internet is unstable since she's with the kids, so she's asked me to play a bit of a video that she has put together.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Susan.
Thank you to the United Democratic Women for holding this space to talk about abortion access and restriction challenges across our country. My name is Karen Chase, and I've been active in Washington state politics my entire life, from marching as a kid with my mom in war protests to working on education as a school board member and healthcare and human rights issues as our county human rights commissioner, as president of the Washington Federation of Democratic Women, and most recently, I was elected as a board member of the Seattle chapter of the National Organization for Women. In Washington state, we are fortunate that if you want or need to end your pregnancy, you have the legal right to have an abortion. It doesn't matter if you're a minor, an adult, married, gender nonconforming, an immigrant, incarcerated, or differently abled. Everyone in Washington state has the right to choose to stay pregnant or to have an abortion. So how did this all become a law? Well, in 1991, activists rallied behind a law protecting abortion access in Washington called Initiative 120. And their goal was to limit the reach of attacks on Roe v. Wade in an abortion-hostile political climate marked by Reagan-era influence and the rise of evangelical voters. Abortion rights activist Marcy Bloom, in 1991, was the director of Aradia Women's Health Clinic and the board president of NARAL Pro-Choice Washington. She said that in blue states like ours, we realized we can't really depend on the feds. You just never know. We saw the power of the right wing. We saw the power of the Catholic Church and the evangelicals. They weren't a political force until the Reagan years. And so Initiative 120 evolved, and as she put it, into our own statewide Roe v. Wade. So in 1991, Initiative 120 was passed by a vote of the people and declared that a woman has a right to choose a physician-performed abortion before fetal viability. But Initiative 120 did more than legalize abortion at the state level. It included an economic equality provision to ensure that women could access the procedure regardless of cost. This is the reason that Washington allocates state Medicaid funding for abortion, a rare deviation in a country where the federal Hyde Amendment restricts the use of public dollars for most abortion care. Each state gets to decide how it uses its Medicaid funding, so part of it was making sure that economic issues could not be a barrier to women to make this choice. And this is critical because women of privilege, women of means, women of wealth can access safe abortions because they can go to another state, they can go to another country, and poor women and girls can't. Washington further expanded access to abortion through the legislature's passage of the Reproductive Parity Act, which mandates that insurance companies that cover maternity care services also cover abortion. So here in Washington state, we must also thank Senator Patty Murray and Senator Maria Cantwell as steadfast advocates here and across the nation. And like the majority of Americans, they understand that these are decisions that belong between a patient and a provider, not politicians.
Karen asked me to stop at 3 minutes. It's actually a 7-minute video, so we're done.
Thank you, Washington State. It looks like we're all aware of what we need to do in our states. We're going to move on to our state reports, and we are running a little on the late side. So state presidents, do you think you could maybe do those reports in a minute and a half? So we are going to start with, I don't think there's anyone here from Arizona. So we're going to start with California. Carolyn, that's you, but she might have stepped away. That's okay. We will go on to Nevada. Ellen, will you let us know what's going on in the state of Nevada?
Great. Thank you so much, Pam, and I will be pretty brief. So thank you, Gail, also for the shout out before for our work with the Nevada National Organization of Women. We did join with them at their ERA event here in Nevada on January 28th. And on a related note, I was personally also pleased to have signed on to an amicus brief from former legislators, retired legislators who voted for the ERA. We are also being part of a separate lawsuit to force the archivist to publish the ERA. Additionally, we had two other things of note. The first is that we signed up our first affiliate here in Nevada. We have the Democratic Women's Club of Douglas County that joined as an affiliate of ours. And we're very excited about that and looking forward to having them become very active. And the third thing that I wanted to share with everyone is that our senior senator, Catherine Cortez Masto, is submitting a video for the Women in Blue. Oh, you're muted, Pam.
Thank you so much, Nevada. Nevada is our youngest state, and they are growing like weeds. So thank you, Nevada, for all your good work. Okay, next is the state of Idaho. Please welcome Madam President Jenny Ballou.
Thank you so much, Pam. Well, I will be really quick for you. We had a great meeting in Idaho in the fall. We hold a meeting twice a year at least after our state central committee meetings. We had a fantastic talk, both virtual and in person, with a city councilwoman from Boise that talked about bringing the Amtrak back through Idaho. We would be so excited to get rail service back in, passenger rail service. We are planning for our Women in Blue virtual event that will be on the 27th of February at noon. We would love for outside state people. You're welcome to join us. There is no charge for it. And then we have our annual meeting will be on March 13th after our state central committee. The big thing going on in Idaho right now, besides some of the hideous legislation that we have going on, is that we've had this fantastic new state chair, and Fred has done a phenomenal job. He has given us a new plan. He has given us a healthier fundraising. He has brought in new donors, new trustees, and apparently he has given us his all because he has had to resign having a fatal cancer diagnosis. So we will be having, unfortunately, a new chair election for the state party in March as well. We've got some exciting people that are running for it, and we hope to continue the good path we've been running. So we're happy to have you join us on our calls in Idaho. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam President, and for the good work that you do in Idaho. All of us working together just makes us more powerful. So next I'm going to move on to my colleague and my partner in crime. She's also running for city council. Let's welcome Madam President Beverly Michael from New Mexico.
Thank you, Pam. Yes, happy to be here. So much has been going on. Let me try to put things in order. From the last time we met with the report, what we've done is have our legislative field trip virtually. So our Women in Blue Day was January 25th. We had, I'm going to say 88 of our members from statewide membership participate. We had 14 legislators who joined us. We were able to talk about our initiatives and our position papers and some of the things we worked on that were in, and I'm going to say also a few things that weren't in our resolutions, were funding for food insecurity and housing insecurity and behavioral health were three big components. We worked on supporting economic justice, memorial that one of our legislators was sponsoring. We were, some things that came up that we've also supported through lobbying efforts have been legislation for missing, murdered Indigenous women and men. And that probably was one of the bills why Rebecca Tutchin, one of our members from Pueblo of Laguna, had to leave, was regarding that legislation. So normally what we would do, it's a really fun event. We would be going in person. This year things were uncertain, so we did have to do it virtually. But Pam started, I think, the train ride in and calling it our field trip. So teacher that she is, we'd have folks come in from Las Cruces to Socorro and catch what we have is the rail runner that runs north and south I-25 up to Santa Fe from Socorro. And so riders would catch along the way, get on the train, and we would all ride up together to the legislature in our Proud Women in Blue shirts. Yeah, so we really missed the not being able to do it in person this year. But the virtual event was pretty successful with attendance. And we really were happy to hear from our legislators and know that they were working on legislation. Idalia Lechuga Tena is our legislative and resolutions chair, and the way she wrote them up was beautiful, including research on bills that were being presented this session. So thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam President. And we're always, of course, proud of New Mexico. Yes, just real quick, we would go on the field trip, and this particular Women in Blue, we actually discussed legislation with our legislators, because we go on the field trip up to Santa Fe right after the big stuff happens. I got to go get those women out of the bar, okay, back over there and start lobbying. So thank you, Madam President. Up next is Washington State. Susan, are you giving that report?
I think Karen is available to give that. I'm having a coughing fit. I'm sorry.
Karen, are you here? If not, Marilyn, can you say something?
Well, actually, if Karen can't speak, I think I'm done coughing. So this is Susan Herring. I'm the first vice chair.
Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, we have our legislative agenda was the same as our Planned Parenthood organization here in Washington State. And so we did some lobbying of our legislators last week. Unfortunately, the one bill that we were trying to get was to maintain access to abortion for all, kind of a measure to make sure that whatever happens with Roe versus Wade doesn't affect the state laws that that Karen just talked about in her video. Excuse me. Unfortunately, that died in committee, so it's not a horrendous thing at this point because we do have state law that protects us, but it would be good to have another statement, and we'll be working on that probably next session as well. We had our quarterly meeting, and we do that in, we have a quarterly meeting that goes along with the state party. And so, excuse me, we've had some great speakers, and I think what we're going to do for the upcoming year is to concentrate on certain campaigns and doing fundraising for those to maintain our blue status in the state legislature. That's it.
Thank you, Susan, so much for reporting for Washington. And I believe, Madam President, Carolyn Fowler, are you back with us? So we want to hear from the Sunshine State of California.
Well, greetings. Thank goodness the sun is shining, but we still have broadband issues. Too much, too much, too much. Well, this will be very quick. We've just got a lot going on in terms of our upcoming state party convention is March 4th through the 6th. It was going to be held downtown Los Angeles, but on the air of caution, even though all the health officials said it could be done, we are doing that virtually. So from March 4th to the 6th, that's what everyone is gearing up for. The Women's Caucus is planning a huge celebration with the in conjunction with the state party for Women's History Month, which you know is March. It was going to be March 1st, but then we found out that was State of the Union Day. So we're waiting on another date for that. But we are going to be celebrating many of our leaders in the state that have been working on behalf of justice, from our Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, through our Secretary of State, our Lieutenant Governor, just all in different areas, whether it's healthcare, our democracy, abortion rights, reproductive rights, etc. So we also will have a panel discussing some of those key issues, celebrating also immigration rights, some of our younger leaders.
All right, we're at 1 minute warning.
And I appreciate so much the fact that we have had that we will have that opportunity. And then it's an endorsing caucus meeting for us. So we'll be endorsing many of our legislators. That noise you heard, I'm trying to sit in on my endorsing caucus meeting at the same time. You know, you have to multitask. So that's the theme of the conference, is really getting our party lined up for who we're going to support for the midterms and the finals. I think that's everything. Christine, if you can think of something else, please add it right this quick.
Nope, you said it all.
Okay, thank you. And we just recently celebrated at our last meeting, we did a salute to all our veteran women. So that was very successful. And 2 of them are running for Senate seats in our state. So thank you very much. And that concludes.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you to our superstar member, Christine Pelosi, for joining us here today. She's also our 5th vice president. Well, we're getting up to making announcements, and I just wanted to ask anybody from the national if there are any announcements that you have for our members. Now would be the time to do so. Gail, Dot, Cindy, anybody?
Well, this is Gail. I would just mention that our national convention will be virtual this year, and it will be June the 11th and 12th, if that's the Friday and Saturday. I hope I have those dates right. I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Check.
We'll begin at 11 a.m. Eastern, and we will adjourn at 2 p.m. Eastern on both days. On Friday, after we get to 2 p.m., then we will step out and have our regional meetings.
Thank you. And Gil,
Friday is the 10th.
Yes.
The 10th and 11th.
10th
Okay.
and 11th.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? Okay, we are getting ready to adjourn, and I just want to thank Carolyn and Karen for putting on such a wonderful regional meeting and co-hosting this for our Western states. And at this closing, and before we adjourn, we're going to make a pitch that if any of you so feel compelled to give a donation to your local Planned Parenthood, we would really appreciate that. Each state has their local one. And always remember that no donation is too small. No donation is too small. Karen?
I just want to, this is Karen Chase, president of the Washington State Federation, and I want to thank you, Pam and Carolyn, for this, for accommodating my inability to be there fully, as I am teaching a ski instructing. But what I really wanted to just briefly, quickly say is, with the elections coming on right now, they're so important. It's not only our congressional folks, but at the races where we really need to be thinking about are the school board level, right?
Yes.
And thinking about how we're bringing our education forward. And Professor that was speaking today just so struck me that it resonates that we are those that need to be doing the legacy planning. And so I just wanted to leave with that, the great appreciation for being able to join you from the great Pacific Northwest. And thank you all for accommodating my unstable internet.
Thank you, ladies. Remember, we are women. Hear us roar. We are important. The work we do is important. So keep on keeping on. This meeting is adjourned.
Bye.
Congratulations. Great meeting, everybody.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Yes, well done. Best
Thank
meeting.
you.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's.
Happy
and
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's.
Meeting, Pam.
Best
Thank
meeting
you.
we've had
Okay.
yet.
Vote.
Very good. Very
Please
good.
vote,
Thank you.
support education.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just